Yeah, there are two. It's a two-volume set, about 800 pages, and it's divided into six parts. The first five parts are the chapters, 41 chapters on different subjects. And then the sixth part is a pretty large appendices, a big bibliography of over 1,100 sources, and an author topic index, a scripture index. And so the first part deals with basically the Judeo-Christian scriptures, the clobber scriptures, and there are about 8 of them that are used, 7 against gay people, lesbian people, and then 1 that's used against transgender people. So I go through the Old and New Testament, and then the last chapter of part 4 is the modern day church, which my focus is primarily the Mormon church, but I do quote lots of different sources and faith traditions in how they've wrestled with the issues. But that fourth chapter deals specifically with the Mormon issues that maybe make it an extra hurdle often for a lot of LGBT and intersex Mormons to come out and claim their space. The second part is what I call the stepping stones towards a Zion community. And that deals with addressing some of the issues that Mormonism brings in, and the sciences, so reparative therapy, neurology, and homosexuality, a chapter on psychology, psychological explanations of homosexuality. I go back and look at some of the hidden people in the Old and New Testament who were probably gay, lesbian, or transgender, or maybe even intersex. And intersex or hermaphrodite, the traditional term that has been used for hundreds of years, was occasionally talked about in especially the Talmud and some of the extra writings in Judaism. And so it's interesting to start pulling things together and start addressing how some of the passages in the Old and New Testament were changed often to meet maybe social concerns that weren't often or actually addressed in the Old and New Testament, especially in the way the Sodom and Gomorrah story has been used for the last 1,500 years against gay people, and the interpretation isn't there.
Yeah.
When you get right down to it, it is not there. And that's why most mainstream Protestant and the Reformed and more liberal Jewish communities have actually started accepting LGBT people and even celebrating same-sex relationships and commitment ceremonies, and now as marriage in those countries that have legalized same-sex marriage.
Right.
So that's the second part. There are about, I think, 15 chapters that deal with different issues. Part 3 is what I call the restoration and continual revelation, more stepping stones. And it's more specifically Mormonism, but it also includes a chapter on personal revelation, a chapter on communicating with church leaders, and I have a number of exchanges different people have had over the years with LDS or Mormon church leaders, and then also a section on parents who have communicated with church leaders. Now, volume 2, part 4, has 11 chapters that deal with specifically LDS Mormon history, quotes, and publications, and politics, primarily in the western half of the US, the United States, but there are a few things that have happened in other areas of the world. And the good, the bad, and the ugly is one of the terms I've used over the years when I've talked about the project. And Prop 8 California, which eventually brought about marriage equality. The LDS Church was one of the main groups of religious groups that was involved in trying to get Prop 8 passed in California, which would support the amendment change to the California Constitution that had a domino effect across the United States. And so I talk a lot about that.
Right.
The final part of chapters is Stepping Up to Zion. And that's, well, one of the chapters is called Soulforce Satyagraha, which is based on an ideology that Mahatma Gandhi created, kind of merging a Sanskrit word, Satyagraha, which is soul force, and then he combined some of the teachings he had learned through Christianity and the teachings of Christ and some of the philosophers to address imperialism and colonialism in India, which eventually brought, for the most part, without arms and war, independent rule by citizens of India instead of the British. And then Martin Luther King Jr. used that in the civil rights movement in the United States. And then it was 1999-2000, a Baptist evangelical minister in the United States who had been part of the 700 Club had ghostwritten all of North's biography and work with Pat Robertson and some of the other evangelical leaders. He came out, and he actually came out in the mid-90s. And in 1999-2000, he and his partner organized Soul Force Incorporated, which was to bring these ideas, and he's actually worked with a grandson of Mahatma Gandhi and the one daughter of Martin Luther King Jr., and even to some degree Camilla Scott King, on learning firsthand by people who were involved with these great leaders, spiritual and political leaders, how to create change. And so Reverend White started doing this to bring LGBT people and other people of faith together for social justice for sexual and gender identity minorities. And so I have a whole chapter there and some instances where some of those ideas have actually been used in different areas of Mormonism and in some other faith traditions. And so anyway, the last part is about building bridges to find reconciliation, to find the stepping stones of hope and some ideas that I throw out there, and then focus on the key teachings of Christ.
So it's pretty much an encyclopedia